It's that meeting. Apologies for absence.
Just Candida Brudenell, who I'm substituting for her today.
I'm going to have to leave about 25 past 11 if we're not doing it.
I'll be sad if we don't.
Got to go to County Hall for me.
Okay, it's fine. Declarations of interest. None. Minutes of the meeting on the 13th of January 2023 for confirmation. Robert?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You happy? Okay. Thank you. Item 4, Human Resources Update.
Thank you, Chair. So members will be aware at the January meeting of the HR committee, members agreed to combine the Equalities Monitoring Report into the HR update. So the HR update that you've got today incorporates those two reports. We've got Matt and Nick who are here from the People and OD team. So I'll hand over them to take you through the paper.
Okay,
yeah, thank you, Damien. Over to me to start with. In terms of the human resources update then, the period that we're covering is the 1st of January to the 31st of March, and absence data is reported for the period 1st of October to the 31st of December 2022. As David said, the report now includes the equalities monitoring data as well for the period 1st of October to the 31st of March, and Matt will cover that after I've done the HR elements of it. So if we work our way through the paper, the staffing numbers during the period 1st of January to the 31st of March, there's been 24 employees who've commenced employment, and we've got a total of 17 leavers during that period since the last report. The table, if members refer to the table on the first page, you'll see that the establishment is showing currently 23 down on whole time, but we are running 2 trainee courses which I'll come on to fill that gap. We then move on to the whole year overview for the period April 2022 to April 2023. In that time, workforce numbers have reduced by 30, and that's mainly as a result of whole-time and sports service staff vacancies. But this formed part of the management of salary budget, pending confirmation of the budget settlement, so we were managing that in line with the future budget settlement. I am pleased to say that we've been through a recruitment campaign, and we have got 24 new whole-time trainees commencing training in April. They've just started the April course, and we've got a further course in September, so that will bring 24 new trainees onto that. In addition, we got 3 on-call firefighters who came through that process as well, who applied through that process, so there's an additional 3 coming on board as well through that process. And then we also ran what we call a migration process, which gives on-call employees the opportunity to transfer from their on-call system to the whole-time system, and 6 were successful through that process. In addition, we ran a transferee process, which is where we invite employees from other services who are interested in joining Notts Fire Rescue to go through a process to see if they would want to join us, and we had 2 successful candidates appointed through that. So over the period we've brought in quite a number. Councillor.
Go.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I've got page 19, small employees and 4 Bain. What sort of roles they got, these 4 people? Any information? It says grade 1 to 4 plus apprentice.
It's in the table just above 2.38, so the support employees. This one, sorry.
No, I think they are in different departments, so I haven't got the specific
Oh,
detail.
okay.
We can get that.
All right.
But certainly areas such as ICT, we have a number of apprentices throughout the organisation, and they will have come into, and that's in grades 1 to 4. So we haven't got that detail.
And
But we
this
can provide
next page, number 20, it says there was application 24, but only appointed just one. And what is sport role? What role is got? For her? Number 20, page 20.
Page 20.
Just with this one.
Again, we would have to get that information from
Oh,
you.
okay.
Yeah,
All right.
we'll get that for
That's
you.
right, yeah.
Anybody else? Nope. I think really, I suppose really overall we're kind of moving in the right direction. I think quite in terms of the national trends, we sort of seem to be mid-table on most of them, really.
Yeah, do you want me to go on now? I was just going to go through the absence side.
You
of
can
things.
do,
Yeah,
yeah,
shall I
yeah,
run through
yeah,
that?
yeah, okay, yeah.
Just to finish off in terms of the staffing side of things, we've also ran a number of promotion processes. We've undertaken those to fill vacancies at supervisory, middle and strategic manager level. So we've undertaken a number of promotion processes over the period as well. In terms of leavers for whole-time and on-call roles, it's remained within our planning forecast, which is good. However, the number of leavers from support roles was higher than predicted during this period. We had 36 leavers compared to 26, but that was made up of 8 fixed-term contracts that came to an end and 4 retirements within that. And the pleasing thing is as well, that seems to have slowed down in the latter half of the year. So the 25 of the 36 leavers were in the first half of the year, so that seems to have slowed down since then. There is a revised workforce plan currently being developed for the period 2023-25, and that will be reported to committee at the next meeting. So if we move on to the sickness absence side of things, this covers the 3-month period between the 1st of October and the 31st of December 2022. During that period, total absence across the workforce increased by 102 days, which would be expected normally in that period because of seasonal variation. And this represents a decrease on the same quarter of 17.3%, so pleasingly it was down on the equivalent quarter in the previous year, but slightly up on the previous quarter in this year, which, as I said, is often due to seasonal fluctuation. If members turn to Appendix A, that sets out the trend, the ongoing trend with regard to that. So that's page 23. You will see there the actual graph showing what the trends have been over the periods from 2019 towards 2022. So you can see the actual levels there and where we sit at this point, broken down by all non-uniformed and whole-time. In terms of national absence trends, as you're aware, the service contributes to the National Fire Chiefs Council Sickness Absence Survey, which we undertake quarterly. And again, Appendix B provides all the information and data that we submit with regard to that and where we sit as a service. But basically, in terms of comparators, whole-time and on-call are below the sector average, and support services are slightly above. We continue to manage sickness absence on an ongoing basis. We have a high-level absence review group, which is at a strategic level to look at our trends and ways of mitigating the levels of sickness. And we have a regular ill health case management meeting at an operational level to deal with cases, long-term sick cases that we're dealing with. So that's absence. And then just finally, in terms of other workforce metrics, there were no grievance, disciplinary or harassment investigations during this period. And there were 2 redundancies which arose from the workforce review that took place, and they were agreed by the Fire Authority with effect from the 31st of March 2023. Matt's now just going to cover some of the equality stats, which, as I said, is the first time that we've included in this report.
Thanks, Nick. Okay, so yeah, just as Nick said, we are looking at the period 1st of October to the 31st of March 23. Operational numbers in terms of diversity have not changed hugely over the last 6 months between this period and the last. But actually, when you look at the support staff roles, which Councillor Khan was mentioning earlier, you'll see that the representation within those roles is generally good, with broadly 50% in terms of sex, disability at 9%, people from black and ethnic minorities at 9.3%, and people declaring that they are lesbian, gay or bisexual at 4.9%. So those figures for the support staff cohort are looking very positive. In terms of the whole-time cohort, as I say, things haven't moved hugely, but we do have a paper for you today on the last whole-time firefighter recruitment process, and we'll be able to talk to you about the positive action work that was done for that campaign and the outcomes of that. Similarly, for on-call, lots of activity with the sustainability of on-call team across the county for the last on-call firefighter campaign. The attraction rates have looked promising, but as I say, we're kind of in the middle of that process, and we're waiting for people to go through written tests, job-related tests, before we can tell you about the outcomes of that campaign. In terms of the rest of the organisation as a whole, numbers, when you combine support staff and operational functions, we've still got some work to do. We know that we've still got some work to do, and we are doing that by the positive action campaigns that we are undertaking with whole-time and on-call. We've also been doing a rebranding exercise of our recruitment campaigns for support staff and operational workforces, and that's part of our presence at job fairs, careers fairs, going into schools, all of that kind of thing. So we're trying to improve the information that's going out to people so that everybody understands the range of roles that we have in support staff positions, but also obviously the firefighting operational roles that we have as well. Do you want to go into any more detail, Damien, unless you do?
No, thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody comments, questions? No? I say I think overall moving in the right direction, mid-table on most of the things, probably be better to be in a sort of top quartile if you could possibly try and aim to get there in the future, I suppose, really.
Yeah.
I suppose leading us into the next one really, about in terms of the 2.48, it's about, I suppose, in terms of having those numbers leaving, I think that gives us an opportunity as well in order to try and move in the direction to make sure that the authority looks like the people that we represent in terms of right across the city and the county. And so I suppose that's the main sort of thing, I suppose, from my point of view, that where we ought to be moving. And with that, I suppose we'll move on to agenda item 5, into that people strategy update.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll take us through this one. We're happy with that. So the people strategy forms part of the delivery of our community risk management plans. Members will be aware we've got a CRMP, the community risk management plan from 2022 to 2025. And I'm just going to go over the high-level elements of what's going to be included in the people strategy in terms of where that brings us together. The people strategy has been formed by Tracy Crump, our head of people and OD, and is underpinned by the national standards, also work streams through the National Fire Chiefs Council. So we're connected into the national work that's ongoing to make sure that it influences the work we're doing here in Nottinghamshire. The strategy will continue to be reviewed, it will continue to be adapted, and as I say, it's important that that's fluid and also incorporates the direction that the organisation wishes to travel in relation to the workforce plan. And then the actions after that are captured within the service's annual delivery plan, which is being presented next Friday to Policy and Strategy Committee. So the people strategy itself has 4 key areas, and I'll talk us through each of those 4 key areas now. So the first one is shaping our workforce, and the key component to that is making sure that we have the right people with the right skills in the right places at the right times. So we have a workforce that meets the needs of the organisation, but definitely focused on the needs of our communities. The refreshed workforce plan was presented to members in January, and that will be periodically brought back to members as well, as is normal, as this committee will know. So within the plan, predictions are made regarding the turnover, recruitment and succession planning, and then that means that we can then develop that into active campaigns, whole-time recruitment campaigns, and recruitment of support staff. During 2022-23, as Nick just mentioned, we've run whole-time recruitment, recruited 61 support posts, and we also recruited promotions at every level within the organisation. So this all falls under the workforce plan, which isn't taking part of the policy. Members will be aware of the Futures 25 work stream, which is looking at organisational efficiency and also our improvement journey towards being outstanding. So the workforce review element of that was conducted in 2022-2023, and that now phase 2 of that is starting this year and moving forward. And that's going to look at the review of current structures in the organisation, systems and processes around efficiency, and making sure that, again, we are fit for the future and we have a workforce that can deliver to the needs of our communities. The outcome of the Futures 25 report will be reported to full authority, and there'll be updates at the forthcoming meetings there. Committee in 2.4 has been made aware through previous HR updates around the challenges posed by higher than normal turnover of staff. As Nick mentioned, that has started to fall back to more normal levels. However, there's still a vacancy rate, although that has reduced within the organisation. And the people strategy makes sure that we factor that into our calculations. But the period post-COVID, where we saw the great resignation, as it was termed, across the sector, I think, and across England really skewed some of those figures. So it's just important that the flexibility around the people strategy makes sure that we can flex our workforce plan to meet those. Recruitment to on-call roles continues to be a challenge, and that's captured. There are 33 new firefighters in the service over the last year for the on-call, but we tend to see year in, year out around a 10% turnover of our on-call staff. The particular challenges around recruiting and retaining those people, but we continue to have a dedicated sustainability of on-call team where we look to recruit and attract new firefighters to that duty system. In 2.6 it mentions around the particular challenges around the new fire safety regulations and the need for fire safety inspectors, a role that takes between 2 and 4 years to train people in, but an immediate demand and capacity both across the fire sector and also the private sector as well. So there's real challenges in terms of recruitment and retention in relation to those specialist technical skills. As part of the shaping the workforce element, there's also a succession planning, which looks at the turnover of leadership within the organisation, make sure that we have suitable plans for current and future leaders in the organisation at all levels to make sure they've got the skills and attributes needed to lead the organisation forward. So the workforce planning piece is really around the whole scale of recruitment, retention, all the way through progression, through to senior leadership within the organisation. The second part of the people strategy is around making sure that we have a positive workplace and culture. We want to make sure that all of our employees experience a positive working environment where they feel they can be their best, they can be themselves every day. So this includes, as it says in 2.8, good communication networks to make sure information is shared, and make sure that's two-way communication with the workforce as well. So they have the opportunity to feedback, make sure that we recognise good performance, make sure that our services values, the National Core Code of Ethics for Fire and Rescue Service is embedded in everything we do. We've recently revised the behavioural framework within the organisation to reflect the publication of the Core Code of Ethics. We also carry out an internal staff survey every 2 years, and we have an action plan out of that that looks to address the areas where we can continue to improve. Engagement with that has been really positive, but we'll also continue to look at improving that year on year and making sure employees feel that they can have their voice and that is heard. Hand in hand with that, in 2.11 is around developing our values and culture, which is a key area of the people strategy too. Members will be aware we had the report around the LFB independent cultural review. Today on the agenda we've got the review from His Majesty's Inspectorate around a spotlight report on culture, and it is very much in the spotlight at the moment, a really important area both nationally but also here locally in the service. So values and culture is really important. We've embedded and we continue to work around embedding the core code of ethics across all of our staff groups, making sure that's fully understood and people have a clear recognition of what is required from them and expected from them. As I mentioned, the services behavioural framework outlines behaviours, expected behaviours at all levels within the organisation and gives a really clear and concise approach to being able to engage with our workforce around what is expected of them. In 2.14, the third area is around inclusion and making sure that we have a positive workplace that has inclusion at its heart, making sure that both internally within the organisation we have an inclusive environment, but also really importantly with our communities, and particularly we are looking to increase and promote our engagement with communities across all of our functions against prevention, protection and response activities. As Matt mentioned, we do positive action in our recruitment. We've refreshed our approach to that and we're doing more to try and attract more women and more people from our Black, Asian and minority communities. However, we have had some success, but as Matt mentioned, there's still some way to go with that. Women represent 6.7 and BAME employees are 5.88 of the whole-time workforce, so there's still some real work we can do there, and it's definitely within our focus as we move forward. Around developing that inclusive workforce within the organisation, we've now got a really well-established employee network. Each one of those employee networks has a strategic sponsor and then is led by the workforce. We have staff network groups for our ethnic minorities, for women, for those who identify as LGBT, and for a disability network as well. And it's important to giving those people who are identified to those characteristics an opportunity to meet and discuss key topics, but also about promoting allies as well within the organisation. And there's a real importance around that. And I know some members have been involved in supporting those groups as well. Finally, in 2.18, the service has a community engagement plan. We have a community engagement manager who is central to promoting our engagement with Black, Asian and minority ethnic communities. We have the BAME Community Advisory Group, which has been established and is well represented within the organisation. And we're also working hard to analyse and utilise the recent census data, which is now coming into the organisation, but making sure we have a really thorough understanding of our communities so we know how best to serve them. The final part of the people strategy, and equally important, is around the health and well-being of our employees, and that covers the physical, mental and emotional well-being of all of our employees. And as we see changes to pension schemes, with the retirement age for operational personnel now 60 years of age, 67 years of age for other employees. This will have an impact on an ageing workforce for us, which particularly within the operational element has a big impact for us. We need to make sure that we support our employees in maintaining a fit and healthy lifestyle, both mental and physical health. And it says in 2.20 around the likely impact on natural age-related conditions such as sight or hearing loss and long-term fitness and health issues are things which we need to be addressing now. We're very fortunate in Nottinghamshire. We have our own dedicated occupational health team. We have an employee assistance programme and we have very close scrutiny of sickness and absence related data and monitoring, both on a service-wide level to make sure we monitor that and can take steps if trends start to emerge, but also on an individual level, so we make sure that individuals are supported appropriately. Yes, Councillor, sorry.
You said you have close scrutiny. What is a close scrutiny? What's the scrutiny?
So candidate,
As is a year.
yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you, Councillor. So Candidate Brudenell, the ACFO, she leads a review group which is represented by HR, by response colleagues, by managers within the organisation. What they do, they both look at short-term and long-term trends around absence data, and that's broken down into the reasons. So mental health or musculoskeletal reasons are normally the predominant ones there in terms of absence. They then look at recurring short-term absence, but then also long-term absences as well. And where we have individuals who have long-term absence, they do case reviews for each of those people as well. So we look at the organisational data and make sure we identify any trends, but then they also do case conferences for individuals as well to make sure they're getting the right support, to make sure that the correct performance management elements are in place, to try and get those people back to work as soon as they can, really, and make sure their well-being is looked after. So it's quite a holistic approach in terms of wide data, but also individuals. That's led by the Assistant Chief Fire Officer. It meets regularly, and we also report that data through, obviously, through to committee in terms of absence. Thank you. Sorry, the final bit, Chair, if that's okay, is that with all of that in place, members will be aware we've got the area for improvement from His Majesty the Inspectorate around making sure that employees understand the welfare that's available, welfare support that's available to them. So that work is continuing. There isn't a specific update this time because we had the update in January, and that work is continuing, but that will be updated to members over the next few months. And we continue to focus on making sure that the provision is there, but also that people know how to access it. Because we find that that's what the Inspectorate found, was there was a lack of consistency in people knowing where to go to get that support. So we're really working on that as we try and move that forward. And finally, just to update, the People Strategy will be updated annually to members underneath the CRMP, but you'll continue to get the regular updates. All of that data is contained within the HR update that you get each quarter. Thank you.
Okay, well done. Nigel.
With the welfare and the new engagement rules and regulations, how are the members engaging? Is it has it increased numbers?
In terms of people accessing occupational health. I don't know in terms of exact figures, but I know that we've had a lot of turnover of staff in our occupational health team, and we're now back up to full establishment there as well. So the areas we covered previously around the turnover of staff, that was particularly evident in our occupational health team. So we've now got a full establishment team in there. We carry out medicals for all staff on a 3-yearly basis, and then it changes for depending on age. But the uptake is there. We do get that data reported back, so I could definitely find that out for you and let you know specifically. We also have an external body, so the Employee Assistance Programme, the EAP, which sits outside the organisation, offers like an independent support, particularly around mental health, but also with channels into other support as well. So I know there's a really good uptake of that, and the higher levels of uptake seen as a positive thing, I think, really, because it just means that people are accessing it and it's providing them the support that they need.
Yeah, it'd be good to see some figures.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Anything to add to that? Or
I think the access that our staff have to the firefighters charity is good as well. The physical, but also the mental and emotional support that is provided by the firefighters charity is really, really good. So yeah, that's another thing that they can access.
Yeah, I think we have a number of tools that firefighters or employees can access. We've got the emergency services blue light, we've got the buddy scheme, so there are a number of sources there. We have something called peer support as well, so there are a number of ways that people can access those services if they need them, and they're provided and communicated out to our staff.
We'll get those figures for you on the occupational health access. Yeah, thank you.
Anyone Well, thank you for your work on this. I think it's hugely important, as HMI points out. There's still work to do on the female and male recruitment side. On call, you know, I think it's always probably been a difficult position, and I think it's probably even more difficult thing to manage. It's a big ask of people, especially as people's lives get busier, and on top of that, you're getting more full employment, so that makes it harder to recruit people who have got that time to be around and be on call at all times, regardless of, you know, time of day or whatever. So really, it's to be honest, I don't know how you manage that really, because that always seems like a huge jigsaw.
It is really challenging, and it's a sector issue as well. That continues to be a focus.
It's a big ask of people.
Absolutely.
You know, and I don't know if I would give that kind of commitment on something when everybody's got a list of a life to live.
Yeah. No, we have a fantastic nearly 300 staff who are.
And it's a great thing for people to do, I think, as well. You know, we have to recognise that, you know, and the difficulty that they have given that commitment up. So it's really important to the service. Couldn't live without it. So I think really, members happy to note the report. Yep. So that moves on to item 6, whole-time recruitment process.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll hand over to Matt and Nick to go through the detail of this one, but feeds nicely into the previous two reports we've just said.
I think all 4 reports had you just run through
quite nice.
Very nicely into one story in a sense.
Exactly, yeah, all one big picture.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Damien. Just in terms of the background, members will be aware that the Workforce Plan 2022-24 identified the need to recruit up to 36 whole-time firefighter vacancies in response to our projected turnover. So therefore, we clearly needed to look at a whole-time recruitment campaign. Now that was delayed until autumn 2022, as I said earlier, with regard to the budgetary situation and awaiting the outcomes of the fire cover review. But the actual process went ahead from August for a period of 3 months, so we ran that over that period up to December. There are a number of positive action events and applicant engagement that took place during the period March to September, and I think Matt's going to just provide a bit more information around the positive action that we actually undertook.
Thanks, Nick. So we have firefighters who are seconded into the team to help with this work. Richard Snow came into the team to help us with this and support us with this. It's really important that we include role models as part of the campaign, and so he was reaching out to other operational staff within the workforce to help with running some of these events. And you can see here at 2.2 the range of things that we had in place over that period of time. As you can expect, it's very, very resource intensive during this period. And what we're trying to do here is just to try and make sure that we're doing as much positive action we can in advance of the recruitment process, to make sure that people understand the type of job that they're coming into, because not everybody is cut out to be a firefighter. And we want to make sure that they have a realistic idea of what the job is about, down to just simple things like, you know, working shifts that people don't necessarily understand. And we also try to give a better insight via have-a-go days. So putting people in fire kit, making sure that they have some insight into some of the operational activities that they will be involved with and that they will be going through as part of the role. But also as part of the, and looking at the apprenticeship as well. What are the demands of the apprenticeship over the next couple of years that they're going to be going through from a kind of written perspective, and also what the 13-week course at our Service Development Centre is going to look like as well. So we try to give a really, really kind of comprehensive picture to people during that period. Supporting that, we have our advertising campaign as well. So we do work on local radio and other media, social media, targeted posters, banners, all of that type of thing, just to make sure that we're getting the message out to as many people as we can. Our have-a-go days are open to everybody, but they are targeted. So we advertise to different communities. and to underrepresented groups to try to improve the diversity of the people coming through. We also sponsored a female football tournament, a women's football tournament as well, which is a great way of getting people who are very, very active to actually look at this role and be involved as well. So as you can see, there's a huge overview there of the things that we do. In terms of outcomes and success, 62% of those people were successful actually engaged in the positive action, which is really, really good to see. And the actual outturns in terms of applicants have been positive this time around as well. Not as positive as we'd like, as you've said, Chair. We need to be making more progress on this, and actually meeting kind of 14% of people from ethnic minority backgrounds of the census from 2021 across Nottinghamshire. That's good because it's representative of the community, but actually we probably need to be, working to double that if we're going to improve the diversity of the workforce over the next few years.
How do you intend to do that?
That's a very good question. So we need to do more work with young people. So we need role models within firefighting roles to speak to young people about young people from BAME backgrounds. To talk to them about the role of a firefighter, what it's like being a firefighter, and what they might need to do to get there. So we need to invest in our resourcing for young people and going into schools and talking to young people about becoming a firefighter.
You go to schools.
We do go to schools,
I was going to suggest
we do that, but I do think we need to redouble our efforts in those areas, and we have had cadet schemes in the past, which it'd be great to see more cadet schemes in the future, which have some representation around in terms of underrepresented groups. We also need to do.
And you need to work with groups too in the city.
Yeah.
There's some different groups like African groups. There's some of them like there's some African and Asian groups in the city of county.
Yeah.
But you can probably source for that and then go through them as well.
Yeah. Ganinda is in touch with. I think she's been in touch with you in the past, she does do a lot of work to try and target those groups. But obviously we need to improve on that.
I'm going to have a meeting with her.
Yeah.
We're supposed to have a meeting, but the day of the meeting was my full council. We didn't go. I'm
Okay.
really going to work with her.
Yeah. Well, you'd be very welcome to, and we need advice and support in this area as well. So if you're willing to do that, that would be really helpful.
Just on that as well, Chair, if that's okay, Councillor. We're within response to our crews, the operational crews, we're also starting an initiative around like a community befriending scheme with different groups. So part of that is embedding positive action within our day-to-day work. So we don't just do positive action before a recruitment campaign. Positive action is around communities understanding what fire service can offer to them, roles, safety support and everything, but also us understanding our communities better as well. And we'd really welcome the support of members in terms of identifying those groups for crews to engage with. And there's some really good examples, which I'll catch up with you outside the meeting about, but it'd be really good. So we want to approach it as like a really broad piece rather than just focus just on recruitment, trying to build our relationship with the right community groups to be in there. So that'd be excellent. Thank you.
Okay, go.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah. Actually, I'm very pleased with the organisation. They have very well worked with advertisements, social media, posters and leaflets, been on the radios and all that. I've been on the radio a couple of times last year, Radio Dawn, and they were well response, and I think I noticed that 55 people come forward, applicants from the BAMEs,
Yep.
and 4 successful. And do you have any information? Are they male or female, or what ages they come forward?
We can provide that for you. Yeah.
If you can
I think
email me on that.
if I think we've got a couple of actions, haven't we, to provide you with a bit of information. So if we send the document through to you with some of that information on, is that okay?
Thank you very much.
we'll do that.
Yeah, can you send it to me too as well?
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, just finish off in terms of the report then. Thank you, Matt, for that. The report outlines the selection process and also the dropout rates, which is useful information for us in terms of the future for the next campaign we run to identify where we need to focus our positive action work. So that's provides us with some really helpful data there. It looks like the workforce plan is indicating there will be a shortfall in establishment before April 2024. So we are looking at a potential recruiting again, which will need to be considered by the service through to 2025. But this will form part of the workforce plan, the next one we're doing for 23-25, which, as I said, will be reported to members at that point. And just as I said earlier, just to finish, the service also undertook a transfer process which brought into external employees to the service, and also we migrated 6 employees across from on-call roles into whole-time, so again to meet the needs of the workforce plan and ensure that our ridership levels are up to the level we need them to be. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments, questions from members? No, well, I think the positive action is good. I think that also opening people's eyes to what's expected is important too. It can't always be just one side of the coin. You know, it needs to be what the service needs. I mean, I used to work down a pit for 10 years, but I don't think I'd made a good firefighter. You know, I think it's quite an innovative programme, really. And I think it's good that we're reaching out to all communities. 2.5, it is an improvement, but I think there needs to be a bit of a step change on that, as you pointed out, in a sense, really. And I think those lessons learned in 2.10 and 2.11 are important as well, because I think that's going to help move that direction on, really. Members happy to note the content of the report?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to item 7, HMI CFRS, just rolls off the tongue, values, culture and spotlight report.
Thank you, Chair. I'll present this paper to members, if you please. So this paper is to present members with an outline, an overview of the recent publication of a spotlight review into culture and values in the Fire and Rescue Service by His Majesty's Inspectorate. And I think everybody will be aware of the recent highlighting of misconduct, inappropriate behaviour across the fire and rescue sector. The independent cultural review from London Fire Brigade and other reports in mainstream media as well. And following that, the Minister of State for Crime, Police and Crime commissioned a spotlight report by His Majesty's Inspectorate, and they committed to delivering this by April 2023. They started efforts in January and they looked at the specific themes of values and culture, training and skills, fairness and diversity, and leadership. They used the evidence that they found from the second round of their inspections, but they also used a variety of other data, including the reporting through their confidential reporting line, through a number of other studies and learning from previous occurrences such as like the Stephen Lawrence report, and they brought this together to form a basis of findings and recommendations for the sector. That report was published on the 30th of March and the service immediately took steps to address the content of the report and the recommendations. So just moving through, in the main body of the report, HMIC highlight in the report that they have commented and highlighted on the concerns around values and culture in the fire and rescue sector since they began their inspections in 2018. And they report that they found long-standing and deep-rooted issues around values, culture, fairness and diversity across the sector. And whilst they identify that some services have taken steps and got better at promoting positive professional cultures, most services still need to do more to improve equality, diversity and inclusion, and progression, particularly for staff, for minority groups is not equal and therefore is lacking, preventing greater diversity in leadership roles across the sector. In 2.3, the Inspectorate highlighted that while services had shown improvement in some areas, just under half, so 17 fire and rescue services had been given inadequate or requires improvement grades, and the causes for concern are currently in place with 5 services across England, and indeed 2 of those services are on the engage level of monitoring with His Majesty's Inspectorate, so that is where close scrutiny and monitoring of improvement is put in place, and values and culture were central to those being in place within those services. Sadly, the Spotlight report cites some horrendous examples of inappropriate and unacceptable behaviour by fire and rescue staff, and highlights that staff survey results in every fire and rescue service in England highlight examples of bullying, harassment and discrimination. The HMIC reports a culture also where staff, including some managers, don't feel able to challenge inappropriate behaviour, and it puts us at the centre of where minor infringements or minor misbehaviour then develops an environment and a culture where more serious occurrences can happen. However, there is a balance where His Majesty's Inspectorate highlight that some services are handling concerns appropriately, and they are taking steps to address the cultural issues. So there is a balance in the report, despite the severity of what they find. In 2.7, it highlights that we have 35 recommendations from the report, of which 19 are specifically detailed for Chief Fire Officers. Members will see at the end of the paper in Appendix A that the 19 recommendations are broken down there. Each of those recommendations has a specific timescale, and they cover a range of areas which are detailed in 2.8. Everything from how people raise concerns through to safeguarding checks and DBS records, through to embedding the Code of Ethics and National Fire Standards. Some of those recommendations, 2 of them are immediate, which we have to address, and then other timescales over a 12-month period that the service has to report back to the Inspectorate about. From 2.10 onwards, so to put a bit of local context really, so members will be aware that we in our last inspection, in our last inspection we received good for the people pillar. We received good across all areas, and we received good in values and culture and fairness and diversity by the Inspectorate, and we are rightfully proud of that position and the hard work that's gone into moving us from requires improvement to good in our last inspection. And whilst we are proud, we really recognise there is no room for complacency in terms of values and culture, and there is further work that we can do to continue to develop this. The HMIC highlight in their report, and we accept, that even in a good workplace, even somewhere that we are proud of, there are still some staff who may act inappropriately at times. Members in 2.12 will be aware that we carried out our own review of EDI in 2021, and that resulted in a 12-point action plan which has been progressed. We've also used that work to support the embedding of the core code of ethics, and as previously mentioned, we reviewed our framework in 2022 around behaviours to make sure that that's embedded within, to make sure the code of ethics is embedded within that. We've also then used the LFB independent cultural review to review our own practices. We carried out a gap analysis against that as soon as it was published, and a report was presented to the last committee meeting here on the 13th of January, outlining the actions that we're going to be taking with that, and members will continue to be updated in terms of those. What we have said as an organisation is that because to maintain a focus on particularly EDI and culture, the service's strategic EDI lead will draw together all of those bits of work into one approach to be addressed within the Year 2 annual delivery plan. So we'll make sure we've got a concerted, concentrated effort to continue our focus on improving EDI. That approach will also see us incorporate the recommendations from His Majesty's Inspectorate in relation to this, and they're incorporated very much within the current goals of our CRMP. Way before the publication of these reports, we had identified that we are on a cultural journey as an organisation. We've come a really long way, particularly in the past 10 years, with the introduction of our own values, the introduction of a behavioural framework and reviewing that. And that was due to continue within the CRMP anyway, but this now just gives it a heightened focus and intent. In 2.17, I just highlight the proposals around monitoring progress against this, and whilst it will be monitored by the Chief Fire Officer through the CRMP Assurance Board, the proposal is that members receive updates in line with the timelines and the committees associated with the timelines for His Majesty's Inspectorate, in a similar way that we're addressing the area of improvement from our own inspection, and make sure that those reports are brought through to members to give that assurance that we're making the progress that is required. As I mentioned previously, 2 of those recommendations are for immediate action, and I can report in 2.18 that those 2 recommendations have been progressed already, so members can be assured of the completion of those. The 2 recommendations were recommendation 17, that the Chief Fire Officer informs His Majesty's Inspectorate of any allegations that have potential to constitute gross misconduct, and recommendation 34, the Chief Fire Officers should review the implementation of the core code of ethics and make sure it is being applied across our service. And in relation to the latter, we have a focused working group. It's one of our key areas within the annual delivery plan for year 2, and we are continuing work to make sure that the core code of ethics is understood by all of our staff and is knitted into our values work, which is well embedded. The report is fully available and the link under 2.19. We can also provide a printed copy if you wish to see that. And then I'll just touch on section 8, if that's okay, Joe, just as I finish. Yeah. And that's around the corporate risk register for the service that goes to policy and strategy, highlights corporate risks in terms of employee engagement, workforce sustainability, health, safety and welfare, and also service reputation. I think the core nature of values, culture and ethics means that all of those are impacted by the contents of this report. But hopefully the steps that we're taking through the action plans, through addressing the recommendations and then providing that assurance through members will mitigate to some extent the risks that are highlighted there. So there are 3 recommendations, Chair, for this paper, but happy to take any questions.
Any questions, comments from members?
Excuse my ignorance, but you scored a good score. How do you get to is it outstanding?
Yes. So when we had our last inspection, there were 4 gradings. There was inadequate, requires improvement, good, and outstanding. His Majesty's Inspectorate have now introduced a 5th grading, which is adequate. So that comes in the between requires improvement and good. So it broadens the spectrum for results. There's a very clear framework that the Inspectorate publish in terms of expectations for each area, and the requirement to achieve outstanding is normally around like innovative practice, particularly consistent behaviours across a range of fields, and also the absence of any areas for improvement as an organisation. So we went in our first inspection in 2018-19, we had 24 areas for improvement. This time round we have 4 areas for improvement, and very much our ambition is to be outstanding. We have an ambition by 2032 to be there. We're working against that framework. We have a team in the organisation who help support that continuous improvement as well. We can provide the framework for reference as well if that would be of interest. Yeah. So, but it's very clearly set out, but it's very much around innovative practice and being at the forefront of the sector, really.
And we've got a timeline that...
Yeah, we've got another inspection due in the autumn of this year, so quite a close frequency to the previous one. So with the introduction of another grading from His Majesty's Inspectorate, we are working with that. So there's a timeline internally. We're currently focused on staff engagement and making sure we're ready for that process coming up and to really portray the work that's been done and is continuing to be done. We do understand then there will be, or there is very likely to be, a further inspection next year, which will be a focused thematic inspection around values and culture. So we very much see that as a follow-up to the recommendations that His Majesty's Inspector has made in this report.
Thank you.
Anybody else? I have printed off and read it. This is obviously a hugely important piece of work.
Very much so.
Not to all fire services right across the country, and in a sense, you know, going back to my days in the pit as well. You know, when you've got an organisation that's kind of very tightly knit and almost kind of homogenous, one-dimensional in a sense, a very male kind of atmosphere. You have to have really strong management to manage that. You know, because otherwise, if you don't, it will be difficult. It's going to be a big piece of work for this committee over the next time. It's going to take a bit of this committee's time, I think, really, and it's going to be massively important to the authority. But you know, the milestones and the timetables are, you know, it's a very, very tight timetable for a hell of a lot of work that's got to be done. But it's not, I suppose, in a sense, it's not just this fire authority, it's got to go through it. All fire authorities in the entire country have got to go through it as well. So, I think we should absolutely right that we should recognise that we've had 2 good inspections. But as you say, there's no room for complacency on that, because this piece of work's taken it a step up in terms of the focus that it's got there throughout the country, in a sense, really. And the spotlight is going to be on the service for that. So it's going to be massively important to the authority. And you know, and I won't be here because I'm retiring in 13 days' time. But I hope we have I think it really is in terms of the authority. It's massively important that it gets done. I wish I'd have found. Actually, I've really enjoyed being on the authority, and I've not been here very long. I wish I'd have found it a lot earlier in my career, really. I think it's been a really great thing to do. But so I wish you well on that.
Thank you.
And I'm quite confident that you'll put the graft in and kind of get to where we need to be, really, because it's been massively important. So, are members happy to know the report?
Yes.
Okay. For that report, and I'll look forward to seeing what the results are, really. So, I think, we've got 3 recommendations. Note the report, support the approach of the Chief Fire Officer in addressing this service's continued cultural journey, and accept and receive updates against the specific HMIC FRS recommendations. Okay, done.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Yes, we agreed.
And I think that's us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your attendance.
Thank you. Well done.